All right. Welcome, everybody. On behalf of the City of Denver Cannabis Sustainability Work Group and the Cannabis Certification Council, I'd like to welcome you to the 5th Annual Cannabis Sustainability Symposium. My name is Mark Ross. I'm a consultant in the industry around corporate responsibility. I've been involved in this symposium now for the last 4 years. This year is the most exciting of all the years because of the pivot to virtual. We have over 130 speakers, 40 plus sessions over 5 days, an entire track around social equity and corporate responsibility. And I'm just so excited to be able to be involved this year. I'd like to take a moment here to introduce my friend, who I've worked with before, the executive director, co-founder, general counsel of the Last Prisoner Project, Sarah Gersten, who will be moderating this wonderful panel. There will be a Q&A at the end, so please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and I'll pop back in near the end. All right, Sarah, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you to the Cannabis Council for having us. And as Mark said, we are so excited that this year's symposium is really highlighting social equity and restorative justice in the cannabis industry. And that is what we are here to talk about today. This is going to be a Last Prisoner Project panel on restorative justice. And I am so thrilled to have with me 2, hopefully eventually 3 of our LPP constituents and both board members here with us, Evelyn LaChapelle and Stephanie Shepard. We're hoping at some point Natalia Wade will be joining us as well. But I will kick it off with you guys. I would love for you to just briefly introduce yourselves. Evelyn, let's start with you.
Yes, let's hit the unmute. Hi, my name is Evelyn LaChapelle, and so honored to be here. I was planning to be here in May in person, and that didn't happen. And so virtually accepting that this is where the world is virtually. And so I'm here ready to speak about restorative justice and share with you my experience in the belly of the beast after my cannabis conviction.
Thank you, Evelyn. Stephanie, just a brief introduction. Oh, Stephanie, I think you're muted.
My name is Stephanie Shepard, and I have been out of prison for 1 year, little over 1 year. I did a 10-year sentence, so roughly 9 years. I served. And working with the Last Prisoner Project has been just the highlight of my release.
Well, thank you so much for that. Obviously, you both have touched on how you came to be working with Last Prisoner Project, which is that you both have experienced the most devastating consequence of prohibition, which is actually being incarcerated in federal prison for very minor cannabis offenses. And I think at Last Prisoner Project, we always try to center exactly these stories. You guys are the reason we do the work we do, the reason we exist. But we say so frequently, and I think especially with this audience, even cannabis consumers and individuals in the cannabis industry so often don't know that not only are we still arresting hundreds of thousands of individuals every year for minor cannabis offenses, but we are still sending people, mostly Black and Brown Americans, to prison every year, often for very lengthy sentences for the exact same thing that probably most people here attending this conference do legally and profit off of now in the legal market. So I would love for each of you to kind of share a little bit more about your stories and your experience with incarceration. Hi, Natalia. Happy to have you here. But Evelyn, let's start with you. If you could just give us a brief background on that experience. And I would love for you to kind of give briefly as possible, but I do want you to kind of give us the full scope of your experience, starting from, where you were at in your life pre-incarceration, kind of, what led you to your conviction, sentencing, and then of course the experience of being incarcerated for years for a very minor cannabis offense.
Yes, I will give you a 6-year experience, hopefully in 2 minutes. So pre-incarceration, I was living in Los Angeles, junior in college, expecting my first child, and I got involved in this conspiracy over a period of 9 months. And for a period of 9 months, I allowed cannabis profits to be deposited into my bank account. 9 months, that's it. I walk away, I graduate from Loyola, I start my career in the hospitality industry as a sales and catering coordinator. I am married and now divorced, woohoo. And I moved back home, and traffic stop led to the knowledge that there's a warrant out for my arrest from the 4 years previous. So this was 2009, and now we're in 2012 for those deposits. 2013, I'm convicted. Me and Natalia both receive an 87-month sentence. Our experience is completely different, and the experience is terrible. And I think that everyone between Natalia and Shepard, we've all experienced it different. I'll say that the traumas of it, I don't think I've begun to scratch the surfaces of emotionally what that was like for me. And that leads to the next point of getting home. So I'm released February of 2019, and you don't have that opportunity. You are expected to move quickly. You're looking to become financially independent. You have 2 weeks to find a job, or you can be sent back to prison. And so since then, I've worked 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and continuously and still trying to rebuild the relationship with my daughter and my family. And then I'm hired, thinking that all of this is behind me, and I'm hired at another hotel, and then I'm fired because someone has Googled my name, and that is what led me here, is realizing that the reentry process is not as easy as I thought it would be. And I don't think that the country in whole is aware, because you get a lot of, well, if we let the inmates out, then how do they integrate? How do they become a part? How do they become an active member of society? And the truth is, with my resume and with my every intention to be an active member of society didn't allow it, right? And so here I am, partnered with Last Prisoner Project in attempting to rectify the wrongs. And I was just talking to Natalia yesterday, like to serve a cannabis sentence and then come home and you can get cannabis delivered to your house is almost like a major slap in the face. And so that is the story in, I think, 3 minutes.
Well, thank you for that. Extremely concise, Evelyn. But I just want to underscore kind of the first piece of this, which is what actually led you to ending up with this conviction. As you said, these were actions that took place when you were in college. You're 5 years later, married, you have your daughter. And simply the act of depositing funds from marijuana sales into your bank account after getting stopped for a traffic violation lands you in jail awaiting a federal trial, and you are kept there until you are sentenced to 7 years in prison. So this entire time taken from your family, taken from your daughter. And again, at its core, this heinous crime that you're being sentenced for is putting funds from marijuana sales into your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm harping on that because, again, I think so frequently there is a misconception that if you're being sentenced to time, and especially if you're being sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, you must have been the kingpin of an operation. You must have been trafficking in kilos of cannabis, and that is absolutely not the case. And I think this is going to be a trend as we hear the stories of Stephanie and Natalia as well. But I just want to highlight that for our audience. It is absolutely not the case, even today in the US, even in a legal state like California, if the federal government is getting involved at all, that you need to be some major player in marijuana distribution to end up with this kind of sentence. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Stephanie. Stephanie, I would love the same kind of summary, take your time, just kind of getting the full picture of where you were at in your life, what was going on pre-arrest, what led to that arrest, the conviction, and your time experiencing incarceration for a cannabis offense.
Okay. In 2010, I was living in New York City. I was selling real estate, doing well. 6 months prior to my arrest, I had an ex-boyfriend who had gotten arrested for selling marijuana, and his attorney reached out to me and said he's very sick, and I knew he was very sick from when we dated. He had a bad heart, and apparently while in the holding facility, he had a pacemaker put in, and he was doing bad. So his attorney reached out to me and said, you are the only person that could give him a place to stay if we get him out on medical bond till he goes to sentencing, help him get healthy till he goes to sentencing. And I agreed. I went to court for him, and this is 6 months after he had been arrested. The agents had never came for me, looked for me, talked to me. My house was the same. My job was the same. I was just moved on with my life when he got arrested, but we had already been broken up for 2 years. Well, when I went to court, I spoke to the judge, and the judge said, I find this young lady responsible and credible, and I'm going to recommend he be released into her custody. An hour later, I got off the subway, my phone pinged, and it was the attorney saying, they're fighting it, they're saying you're involved. 6 months later. And this is an hour after I showed up in court. I was supposed to go pick him up a week later, and as I'm getting dressed, I get a buzz at my buzzer. I open the door, and it's 2 agents. And they said they had a warrant for my arrest. So I let them up. I got arrested. I was on pre-trial for 1 year. And in that year, I'm just working. I'm trying to work. Halfway through, I had to renew my real estate license. And I would always do it on the computer. As I went on the computer and tried to renew it, the first question is, have you been convicted of a felony? And the second question was, do you have a felony pending? Of which I had to say yes. So I did immediately. My license was expired. They took my license away. So now I'm waiting to go to trial. I go to trial, a week trial, 30-minute deliberation on a Friday at 2 o'clock. Guilty. I never went home again after that. All I remember was just going through the tunnels of 500 Pearl Street in New York. And that's the same tunnel that John Gotti and all of these very high profile criminals have walked. And here I am walking it. Never been arrested, never been in trouble. I was outdone. I got a sentence of 120 months, which was 10 years. And I did that time. I got out in 2019. In that time, my father passed away. So that was a big part of what made it so difficult. They allowed me to go to his funeral, but not to see him while he was alive. So they trusted me to leave prison and come back on my own. And in doing that, I wondered, why am I in prison if you trust me to leave and come back? So that has been the hardest thing since I've been out of prison. I've had no interactions with law enforcement, nothing. And the biggest thing that got to me was that I would not be able to vote. And I think I learned yesterday that I might be able to vote. And I'm so excited.
Well, we are so excited for you, and we are definitely seeing, I think, a lot of momentum around this exact issue coming into November. But it just highlights again how much the collateral consequences of even having a conviction on your record, let alone all this time you served, how many barriers that sets up. And Evelyn, you spoke about this, about feeling like you weren't going to struggle with reentry, but then coming out and all of the barriers that you faced. And that's exactly because of those things like not having access to voting rights, not having access to federal assistance, all of the stigma that comes with trying to find employment. And so voting rights is just one of the things that once you are branded in our country a felon, you lose out on so much. And so not only has this time been taken from your life, but now you're stuck with having to overcome all of the systems of oppression that continue to work against you even once you're released. And I think something else you brought up, Stephanie, is that when you're in, this isn't just a detriment to you. It's not just time that's being taken away from your life. It is time that is taken from your family, from your community, you know, missing those big events, missing the death of family members. And I know that that's something both Evelyn and Natalia experienced as well. So when we think about all of the harms that are being done to communities because of mass incarceration, because of putting people in prison for nonviolent drug offenses, it extends way beyond just the person that is actually being incarcerated. And again, I know that that's something that all of you have experienced and all of your families and communities have experienced as well. Natalia, I know that you will be able to touch on all of this. I would love, for you to just introduce yourself, and then again, give kind of the background on where you were at in your life pre-arrest and conviction, what kind of led to that, and then the experience of being incarcerated.
I'm Natalia Wade, and I was also sentenced to 87 months for God, I hate telling this story.
And only speak about what is comfortable, Natalia. I'm so thrilled that you guys do these and you bring awareness, but of course, it's traumatic. It's traumatic for the three of you, and you guys are so brave. Come on here and courageous to share your stories with these audiences. So please, A, take your time. B, only speak about what is comfortable for you. We're here for you.
I had a kind of a different experience. I was sentenced to 87 months. Prior, I was living in Los Angeles, California, working at Carter's, the baby's clothing store. And I get a call saying that Evelyn was arrested. And next thing you know, I found out that my name was on an indictment for depositing funds into my account for marijuana sales. And we went to court and were found guilty. And they took us right away from court. And right after that, I got sick in prison. They didn't know what was wrong. I had to basically fall out and, you know, kind of make up things in order to get medical attention in the federal prison. It took them weeks, maybe months to finally notice me. I spent maybe over $180 trying to go back and forth to the medical, because it was $20 every time. So I had to spend over maybe $180 to help to let them finally notice what was going on with me. And the doctor had my blood drawn, and she just immediately called me back down there, and she sent me out right away. She told me, you know, I don't understand how you're still standing and how you're still living. It was hard because I couldn't, I was maybe like 114 pounds, and my feet swole up like I was 300 pounds. So I knew that something was wrong with me. And I went out and got a couple of tests done and came back. I had lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. I was treated, and then I got shipped to Victorville, California. The medical was not good there. I believe the doctor had quit, and I was kind of like to fend for myself. Then I got really sick. I applied for the RDAP program, the drug program, and we ended up going to Arizona. And there I tried to maintain still my illness. And while I was there, I just started passing out. And, you know, they told the guard, I passed out in the restroom, and they had told the guard, you know, that something was wrong. And he just said, you know, they thought that I was high on drugs. They thought that I was taking drugs. This was told to me after, gotta be honest, this was told to me when I came home. So I never knew that this conversation had happened between the lieutenant, and an inmate overheard the lieutenant speaking with an officer saying that I was high on drugs. That's why I passed out. And then the next day I had passed out again in the shower, and the counselors were there, and he just was like, no. And he called the ambulance. And
Natalia, can you hear me? We're having some trouble hearing you. I'm not sure what's going on, Natalia, but maybe try reconnecting to the Zoom. It looks like she's doing that. While we're waiting on Natalia, I'm still not getting audio. So I would try maybe reconnecting to the Zoom, or I know there might be an option for you to call in without the video, and that might help the problem. Again, I just want to reiterate, I know I've said this before and I will say it again. Thank the three of you, and hopefully, Natalia, we get you back on. it is so important to hear these stories, but of course, you guys have suffered an immeasurable trauma from what you've experienced. I can't imagine the PTSD you go through having to relive this experience, you know, every time that you share your experience in this story. But it really is so critical, especially for this industry to hear, because this industry is being built on the backs of women like yourselves that have suffered. And the industry needs to understand that so that they can really work to prioritize the work that we're doing together at LPP and making sure that we're getting everyone out that is still suffering in prisons for cannabis offenses, but that we're doing the work to ensure that no one continues to be incarcerated or even arrested for cannabis offenses. Natalia, looks like we have you back, so I will let you continue.
Okay. So what ended up happening was my heart was overworking itself, and I got a blood clot in my lungs, and I was on life support for 2 weeks, about a week and a half to 2 weeks. When I came to, my mom and my brother were there, and I believe that the prison didn't even call them. Evelyn called to let them know what was going on. And I also just found this out that every day they asked my mom, did she want to pull the plug? And my mom just kept saying no. You know, what was going on was I wasn't there, but my brain was still functioning. So my mom said no. Thank God for her, because I am, standing here today. I came home December 2019. Now it's time for me to, see specialists and see doctors to find out what's really going on with me. Come to find out, there were more things that were wrong with me than what I was led to believe. And it's hard because, I want to come home. I want to live a normal life. I want to go to work, but now I'm restricted on what I can and cannot do. So it's been a real struggle, but I am finding out, what's going on with my health, and I'm very excited and I'm happy about that. But I'm just grateful to be here today.
Well, thank you so much, Natalia, for sharing. Thank the three of you so much. Again, it's incredibly courageous and we so appreciate it. It's so important. And right now, Natalia, I think it is so critical for anyone, in the cannabis industry or not, to hear what you experienced with your chronic health issues, and to hear exactly what it's like dealing with any kind of health issue in a federal prison. And I can tell you from my work that your experience is pretty standard across federal, state, local correctional facilities. Care is extremely inadequate. It takes outside resources. It takes having an advocate like Evelyn was for you, having family members that are willing to step in and push and fight for you to get basic care. And that's something that not everyone has. And I think that it's so important to hear that in this moment where COVID is really presenting an immediate, urgent health risk for anyone that's incarcerated right now. And of course, we know that in the US, our incarcerated population, a lot of the individuals there have, additional chronic illnesses. They're over the age of 65. And so there are so many people that are extremely at risk of dying from COVID. And when you look at someone that might be incarcerated for a nonviolent cannabis offense, what was already an incredibly unjust situation of serving any time for that offense now could become a death sentence. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, we've seen that. We've seen some of our cannabis prisoners succumb to COVID, and we are fighting. We have set up a robust compassionate release program to try to get anyone that is at risk out right now. And pretty much any criminal justice organization right now is doing that work. But I just saw an article come out today. I think 98% of compassionate release requests are being denied at the federal level. So while we're seeing some successes, I know at LPP we've had some releases across the board, this is not happening. And I can tell you from being the attorney, doing the work opposing the government, the arguments that they're making for why they're not releasing individuals just don't hold up to kind of basic science or logic. You know, they are saying that they have adequate care, that they're adept to handle this highly contagious disease. But Natalia, from your experience, we know that of course that's not the case. And with any infectious disease, our prison systems are overcrowded. There is not basic access to hygiene, to sanitary care, the basic resources, things like masks, the ability to social distance. It doesn't exist when you're in a correctional facility. And so while we're seeing progress, it is definitely not nearly enough to protect women like Natalia was so recently, that if, you know, they contract COVID, they are particularly at risk. So thank you again for kind of highlighting the specific issues that we see when you have any kind of health issue when you're incarcerated. And it's devastating to hear what you've been through. And I know that so many others share similar experiences of trying to access healthcare while they're incarcerated. Evelyn, something that we've touched on with you, and I know something that you are working with us and all of the women here are working with us at LPP, is around our reentry services. And we spoke about this when we're talking about all of the collateral consequences. But you've actually come out and you have been able to find a space for yourself in the cannabis industry. Can you tell us about that? I mean, on the one hand, of course, I think what we are pushing at Last Prisoner Project is that there absolutely should be opportunities for individuals like yourself that have been impacted, that have experienced the trauma of incarceration for a cannabis offense in this industry. But at the same time, you've been traumatized by this plant in a big way. Tell us about what it's like working in the legal industry.
I will say that my experience of getting into the legal industry was a godsend, right? Like, so I know that my story is not the story of the majority, right, of people being released from prison. And so I sort of live in that appreciation. But I did, Vertosa onboarded me as their community engagement manager, basically the director of their events. And that was after hearing me speak, you know, at Big Rock, at a Last Prisoner Project fundraiser. And I had no intentions of entering into this legal space. A, it's a slap in the face, and B, just my experience with the criminal justice system was enough to convince me that this was a crime, that cannabis is, you know, is enough to get you sent to prison for 7 or 10 years, and so it had definitely done its job in convincing me of all the propaganda that we've seen during the Prohibition years. And when I got fired from the Omni, it was as if I didn't have a place in, you know, corporate America or America, period. And then joining Last Prisoner Project and having the opportunity and then being onboarded with Vertosa, I now feel like the cannabis industry is the only industry. Like, I have no intentions of leaving it. the industry has welcomed me with, you know, a warm welcome. And I feel like it owes me. And I hate to say that, right? Because you don't want to tell anybody you owe me anything. But I feel like it is my right to build a platform in this industry. It is my right to earn a feasible income from this industry. And that's what I'm here to do. And I'm hoping in the near future that Stephanie and Natalia and I figure out how to take it over. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I love the social equity programs. And I love that there's a lot of people pushing for ownership in the space, and hopefully, you know, soon I'll have a piece of ownership in the space. But I do recognize that that's not everyone's goal, right? Like a dispensary is not everyone's goal. Manufacturing, all of that is not everyone's goal. And I've been blessed enough to find a space within the industry that's in my lane, right? Like event coordinating, now reentry coordinating, like all of these things that I actually have experience in. And so I would like to see this industry be more inclusive and open more doors and put more attention on not just ownership, but seats at the executive table, seats within the organization. And yeah, that is my goal right now.
And that is something, of course, we are prioritizing with our work at LPP. Social equity is incredibly important, as you stated, but it's not everyone's path or desire to be an owner or operator. And there is such a opportunity when we talk about workforce development that I think is often left behind, especially in conversations around policy, conversations with lawmakers and regulators that are setting up these programs. We're starting to see more and more states prioritize actually hiring justice impacted individuals. But even when states do that, they're often still leaving up a lot of barriers to entering the industry, even as an employee. Stephanie, can you tell us first about some of the restrictions that you face around entering the industry at any level, given, you know, being recently released from federal prison, being on parole or probation? But then also, I know something we've spoken about is sort of those intangible barriers that come from having been incarcerated for, you know, a decade or years that just affect your confidence trying to get a job, or, you know, going into interviews and having to discuss, you know, what's been happening for the past 10 years. Can you kind of tell us about your experience there?
Okay, can you hear me? Oops. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. When I got out of prison, I didn't think I would have the feelings that I had, because I'm still kind of feeling like I'm still the old me who was very confident. I've worked in jobs from the NBA to, you know, top real estate companies in New York City. When I got out, I felt so uncomfortable in my own skin, because now I have this label, this stamp. I'm a felon. When I first got out, I went to home detention, which is you can stay at home, but you have to go check in every day. I had less than 2 weeks to find a job. Otherwise, I would violate. So I panicked. I was like, where do I feel comfortable even going in and asking? So I went to Starbucks. I had an ankle monitor on. And if you've ever seen the ankle monitor, it's not the size of a Fitbit. It's the size of a garage door opener. So I had my ankle monitor on when I go into my interview, and I had to explain to them my situation. I felt so vulnerable at that moment. Like I almost started crying in a Starbucks interview. But it turned out they said, you know, you're perfect. We would love to have you. So I am very grateful that they gave me that opportunity. even though they had to speak to my counselor and my probation officer, and that's extra work on a company. But they did the work. I got hired there. I still work there, but I think I still work there because I don't feel confident enough yet to move forward. If that makes any sense. I haven't gotten the old confidence back quite yet. It's growing every day, but it's a struggle. Like Evelyn, I unlike Evelyn, I did see a place for me in the cannabis industry because I felt like I had to make it right. Like I said, my father had passed away, and not only did they make me feel as if I was a drug dealer, but I did the drug program to get the year off, because you don't get any time off for not being on drugs. So you go, they say, you know, you smoked weed. And yeah. Well, then you're eligible for the drug program. Okay. If that's going to get me a year off, I'm eligible for the drug program. So now I'm a drug dealer to my father, who's 90 something years old. I become a drug addict in his eyes. Now, not really in his eyes, because he never said he felt that way, but this is how I felt. I felt like they have labeled me a drug dealer. Now I'm a drug addict. Then he dies. So I feel like for myself, I need to make it good. Make that time I did good. So that my father knows I didn't do anything wrong. You said I conspired to sell marijuana. If that's the truth, is that the worst thing? Because when I got home, they were delivering, there was billboards. I was like, whoa. I asked one day, what's that line at that building? My sister said, oh, that's the dispensary. Okay. I'm on my way to a drug meeting for my drug addiction to marijuana, but there's a line out the door of a dispensary right there on the corner. And it just floored me. And so with that, I do feel like there's a space for me in cannabis and in telling my story. And like I said, as far as my voting rights, if I'm scared, because I talked to my friend and I said, we can vote. And she said, I don't know. I'm nervous about it. You know what? John Lewis said, get in good trouble. And if I get in trouble for trying to vote, then I'll consider it good trouble.
Absolutely. And, you know, Evelyn, you said, you know, I hate saying that anyone owes me anything, but this industry, this community owes you ladies and anyone that has been impacted in this way, everything. So much, and certainly so much more than it is giving right now. And it's up to us. It's up to us as a community. It's up to all of the companies and businesses participating today to hold this industry, to hold ourselves accountable to you for the lives that have been taken, for the lives that have been devastated because of prohibition. And we have to work every day to repair those harms. And that's what we are doing at Last Prisoner Project. I am so thrilled to have Natalia and Stephanie participating in our mentorship program. We have a job fair coming up at the end of the month with Vangst. I can absolutely vouch for these two wonderful women who want to participate in this industry and who are absolutely owed a space and a spot in this industry and to be given back for what was taken from them. So any companies out there that are looking for some incredible hires, we have two right here. We have many other constituents participating in our reentry program. And we have 10 minutes left. I do want to jump into some questions because we are getting a ton of great questions for you guys. But one of them is, what can cannabis businesses do? And what can consumers do to demand restorative justice practices? And I always say this is one of the easiest things that companies can do. Hire justice impacted individuals. You've heard today all of the difficulties that come with coming out and trying to find gainful employment. And we as an industry have a lot of employment options right now. We in most states have been declared an essential business during COVID. Dispensaries are staying open, cannabis is being sold, and there are lots of opportunities. And as Evelyn said, this industry is like any other industry. Even if, someone doesn't have an interest in being an operator or a manufacturer, you can work in community engagement or events or HR. And so there's really opportunities for anyone. And we absolutely encourage any company to reach out to Last Prisoner Project, figure out how you can get involved with fair chance hiring practices and hiring our constituents that have been impacted by prohibition. So I would say that's definitely step one. Another question came in about partnerships and companies giving back financially. Absolutely, we have partnerships. You can go to our website, lastprisonerproject.org. We've got a partners page where companies can get involved with us and support the work that we do, and that we are a 501c3, so we are tax deductible. There was a question about that. I'm just trying to go through. We have so many questions here. What I would love to hear from you all. I mean, we've talked about, of course, fair chance hiring. What does it look like to you for this industry to really give you guys back? Like you said, you're owed from this industry. What does true restorative justice in this industry look like to you? And Evelyn, I'm going to start with you.
I have so many ideas about how to make these wrongs right. But I think first stepping back and realizing that at the end of the day, outside of the industry, humans attempting to be functioning members of society. And so coming home for us, I would have liked to seen some housing assistance, some financial coaching, some all of that first, right? Because finding transportation and having enough for a car to get to and from work or to and from doctor's appointments is a real hurdle. And having your resume. So when you're in prison, they do all of these workshops. There was one workshop where they had us doing a resume and a colored pencil when we were in Mecklenburg. And I mean, just the resources there, the prisons are receiving this funding to teach us how to be better people. And that had me doing a resume in a colored pencil. And so there's just the basics first, right? And I think that the industry has enough resources to help us meet the basic needs of living, and then just job placement and job training, and for like Natalia, who was the retail manager at Carter's, how do you transfer that experience to retail management in a dispensary or in the industry? And then also realizing on probation, we can't be plant touching. So how do you make opportunities for us in this space until we're able to overcome? And like Stephanie said, I think confidence is a major key in all of this, and that we're coming home sort of emotionally spent, but still attempting to put on a face. And when Stephanie was speaking about confidence, I remember when I got hired at the Omni, Stephanie texted me. She's like, "How's it going?" And I was like, "I just feel like at any moment, someone's going to tap me on my shoulder and tell me I don't belong here." And Stephanie's response was, "No, you got this. It's good." And she later told me that was a piece of confidence for her to be like, if Evelyn's got this under control, then it's coming for me. I think she had just got released or something. And then within, 6 weeks, I got tapped on the shoulder. And so confidence for all of us, I think, dropped. And so I think the industry has enough resources, has enough opportunities, but it's sort of like you have to meet us where we are, right? Like we're not getting out of prison with all of the computer tech experience, right? Like we didn't have computers. I didn't have access to a computer for 7 years. And so now I can't expect that anyone would want to hire me and expect me to be proficient in. When I left, it was Excel. So now it's like Google Docs and Google Spreadsheet and Google Forms, and Google's taken over. And I'm like, but is Microsoft still a thing? And so it's meeting us where we are, or at least building programs that will assist us in meeting the expectations of 2020, because we're still 2013. So
2010.
2010.
I had a BlackBerry when I went to prison. Facebook was the new thing.
Right. And we are beyond all of that now. And finding, and this is not just a plug for Vertosa, but the truth is that they have been extremely powerful and helpful in helping me build my professional skills. And so I would love to see more people do that.
Well, I'm getting told we only have 3 minutes left. Evelyn, I think you gave a perfect answer of how we can really hold this industry accountable. And I just want to say, for all the companies or just anyone working in this industry, at Last Prisoner Project, we have opportunities to become a mentor to help with exactly the kinds of things that Evelyn said. I mean, it goes beyond just those employability skills around reviewing a resume or interview trainings. You know, a lot of individuals in this position, they need that confidence. They need to know that they do have a space and that they deserve a space in this industry. And I think that's absolutely something that this industry has the resources and the will to provide. So I highly encourage everyone to go to our website. It's lastprisonerproject.org. You can sign up to volunteer, to get involved in our mentorship program. And we would love to have everyone in this industry be a part of that so that we can achieve that goal where the industry is actually doing the work to get to that place where you guys feel like you're getting back what you are owed. And I want to thank the three of you so much for joining us today, for sharing your stories. Again, it's so important. It's so courageous. And I know that the entire industry is so appreciative of what you've given up so that we can be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank everybody for listening.
Sarah and ladies, thank you so much for that really not only enlightening but emotional discussion. It is, of the 40-some discussions and panels taking place this week during the Sustainability Symposium, this by far is the most unique and most compelling. So I thank all of you for telling your truth and living your truth and continuing to contribute to making this a better situation for people that come after. And Sarah, your work, tremendous, tremendous, tremendous. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That wraps up this session.